What I wanted to do was just give you a foretaste really of why it's really worthwhile staying on and having your lunch in here and having hopefully an exploration of what's been happening on the ground to deliver some of the stuff that we've been listening to this morning. And I think one of the things that we've wanted to get across was the role of SMEs and the contribution that they're making, not just as small contributions, but actually as massive contributions. And that addresses some of the points that Chris was making earlier on. And I think also we heard National Grid saying, who's going to tell us what to do? We'll hopefully give you some ideas about what needs to happen in terms of connectivity, capacity, and how we see the future in the islands, in terms of the technology, in terms of the resources, and in terms of the infrastructure. So it's going to be very practical, tangible information. And if you still got energy, we've got a bit of a Slido fest at the end of it, which we may use, which kind of asks you questions about what you think and becomes quite interactive. So that, I just wanted to hope that you've got the time to stay after this really exciting session, which I'll just introduce by passing over, I think, to Sue, who's going to take you through the delights of marine energy and some of the progress that's being made in that respect.
Okay. Thanks, Gareth. Thanks, everyone. We're absolutely delighted to be here at what is, a great event at COP26, and what a fantastic venue and views we've got over the river. Thank you to Mainstream, who invited us to take up this panel and talk about marine energy. And I think we've heard a lot this morning about offshore infrastructure. How are we going to manage it? How are we going to deliver it? How are we going to bring that offshore generation onshore? And how are we going to utilize our natural resources for renewable power in the best potential that we have? I've been involved in the marine energy sector for quite a long time, and a lot of my panelists are friends who we've worked very closely for a long period of time. But what I'm hoping to do here is showcase the opportunities and the fantastic potential we've got for marine energy, not only here in UK waters, but globally. And just what that means in terms of the opportunity for decarbonisation of our electricity systems, the USPs, the unique selling points of this sector, and how we're going to move it forward. So my esteemed panel, very pleased to be here if they don't cough me off stage, which would be very unfortunate. We have Andrew Scott, who is the CEO of Orbital Marine Power, and we'll see some of the fantastic technology they're developing here in the UK and for export globally. Keith Murray, Financial Director of QED Naval, again, novel solutions for extraction of tidal resource here in the UK, looking at the global market and looking at potential. Max Karkas, who, like myself, has been involved in this sector for a long period of time, now representing sustainable marine energy, and we'll hear how they are developing technologies overseas and here in the UK. Patrick Moller, CEO of Core Power Ocean, a wave technology, again, global aspirations and building at scale, so the uniqueness of getting this technology to market. And finally, Martin Carruth, who is the Commercial Director for Marine Power Systems. I thought it would be quite useful if we had a gallop through an introduction to their technologies and also the aspirations of these companies to contribute to decarbonisation of our energy systems and developing those jobs, those opportunities, those SMEs, those island economies that we've heard about this morning. I personally feel marine energy has a very unique proposition to play in this landscape, both in terms of the economic development of our offshore energy systems, but also the technical and the financial feasibility of doing so. So less from me and more from the panel. And first I'd like to introduce Andrew Scott of Orbital Marine Power in terms to give us a brief oversight of your really exciting technology and the scale and ambition that the company has at the moment. And hopefully, behind each of our players, we'll see that technology and get to understand it. So, Andrew, over to you just to give an oversight of where we're at and some of the things that I've been leading to. That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I presume just sit down, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Still morning. Andrew Scott, as Sue said, I'm with CEO at Orbital Marine Power. So if you haven't seen what we do, please, you can find lots of information online on social media and our website and things, so get on there. But we basically, for the last 20 years, have been developing a fairly innovative, pioneering version of tidal stream energy. at 20 years, that probably puts us at the top end of programs. I don't think many people have been doing it longer, and that's a journey which we've consistently managed to take our investors and shareholders along and deliver world's leading projects. So in 2010, actually, we were the world's first company to grid connect a floating tidal turbine, which was a 250 kilowatt scale machine, which we connected into Orkney at the European Marine Energy Centre. And that's actually where we're headquartered. We're a Scottish-based company headquartered in Orkney. We rolled forward to deliver a 2 megawatt machine in 2015, which we launched from the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast. At 2 megawatts, that was the world's most powerful tidal turbine. That's what I regard as our full-scale prototype system. And again, that went and connected into the grid and performed exceptionally well in Orkney. Recently, we just launched the turbine that you can see. Is my mic still working? Yeah. We launched the turbine that you can see on the screens. This is the O2 turbine. This is what we're presenting as our commercial demonstrator. So again, it's rated at 2 megawatts. Clearly, you know, one of the things that differentiates us is that we're not installing technology at the bottom of the sea. For 20 years, we've regarded the real challenge of getting costs down in the tidal space is ensuring you can de-risk low-cost capital construction and de-risk low-cost operation. So our system is based really around that principle where the manufacturing of the unit, and to give you some scale of that machine that you see there is about the size of a 747 jumbo jet, 74 meters long, 650 tons, with rotor diameters of 20 meters. So those are articulated legs which lower down into the fast-flowing currents. And so by doing it that way, the manufacturing process is very much driven like a shipbuilding process in confined, controlled spaces, launched from shipyards, where the turbine is then easily towable with low-cost vessels on site. It's very standardized installation of anchors and moorings and cables, familiar to the offshore service contracting space, and we literally just tow the machine on and connect it. Low-cost vessels, costing thousands of pounds rather than tens or hundreds of thousands of pounds. For service and maintenance, most of the power generating equipment's in the hull, which can be accessed with low-cost ribs in a matter of minutes by technicians. And if we need to access the nacelles, gearboxes, and things like that, press a button and the hydraulic legs up, and we can get low-cost access with a turbine staying on site. So it's all optimized and innovated around keeping the costs down and being able to make sure the generator spends most of its life, if not all of its life, generating power. So that's our technology. Our vision really is about taking this global. We're a UK-based company, obviously. We built this with a UK supply chain. About 80% of the supply of this machine came through UK-based companies. We are obviously at the stage, as I said, this is a commercial demonstrator. We want to build more of these for commercial projects. So we're focused at the moment in the UK trying to develop UK-based projects and get government support to allow us to raise investments both into those projects and into growing our business. Ultimately, clearly we want to this technology has got application around the world, and that's where we want to service. Okay?
Thanks, Andrew. And from one in-stream technology device to another, Keith Murray from QED Naval. Could you tell us a bit about your technology?
Thank you, Sue, and thank you, Gareth, as well. Good morning, and obviously a warm welcome to Scotland, Glasgow, and COP26, and also to QED Naval. And apologies for my throat, my cough earlier. But my name is Keith Murray. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for QED Naval. And quite simply, a little bit about QED Naval and our journey. Many moons ago, Jeremy Smith, our founder, CEO, was sailing up the west coast of Scotland and really feeling and recognising the power of the tides. Probably struggled, particularly as a naval architect, having designed nuclear submarines and propulsion systems, struggled really to identify with the costs of deployment and all the shipping that was involved in getting such systems into the sea. And he quite simply went out and set off to develop a self-deploying submersible foundation system, which we've now developed, which over the last 2 years, which is now called SubHub. SubHub has gone on to prove herself in the seas off Ireland for now just over 2.5 years. And in fact, right now she's en route to play her next part in the EU's Interreg Tiger project on the south coast of England. SubHub has already identified savings in the region of 60% in terms of operational maintenance and deployment costs, but also because of her shape, by getting more directional stability and flow onto turbines, she's helping deliver up to 48% more efficiency yields and therefore revenues. And that's quite a seismic and game-changing assistance for the sector. I think QED recognises the need for partnerships and sharing learning, particularly as the sector is growing and learning itself. In 2019, we actually went out and, in a joint venture, acquired the well-known Dutch company, Dutch turbine company, Tracado. Now that brought to QED a fair degree of extra resource in the partnership, but also 20 years of learning and development, what is perhaps the world's most tried, tested and developed turbine. This JV then went on to actually acquire and develop the Dutch government's iconic Oosterschelte, or OTP dam, as you will see there. That was in time the largest tidal array in the world and is a very iconic project, particularly in Holland. The project and scheme was actually showcased by Macquarie Capital, the Green Investment Group, at the Global Climate Adaptation Summit recently, and it was showcased as a solution that is and technology that is replicable in up to 451 flood prevention and delta schemes globally. For us, it's for projects that we've got on at the moment, such as the Oosterschelte OTP dam, our Tiger project and our current UK site pipeline, that we're actually out now really looking for, as a business, struggling to get, and we're looking for strategic partnerships and supply chain as we look to scale this globally. And a bit like a jigsaw, I think we see a lot of the pieces there. There's a significant wealth of resource and capability already in the oil and gas and wind and technologies developed there. And we certainly really now see ourselves really wanting to get that fit with the supply chain, ability to scale globally, and desire to really green up and change. But we also need certainty, I think, and that really comes a lot from government. And that in turn will help bring finance and pipeline. As a great example of potential, we have, I love Gareth's comments earlier, we have a wonderful project which we're developing up in Islay in Scotland, and that's a phenomenal opportunity whereby, working with the local community and the Islands Energy Trust, we've got the great capability to showcase predictable tidal energy and really help get them off diesel, off their grid dependencies and off fossil fuels. And also what we've been doing there is looking at other solutions as part of a mix where, with hydrogen, in effect, we can become quite simply a fuel supply at sea. And so, just quickly, this market, we really believe, and we feel it and we see it, offers a huge £76 billion global opportunity by 2030 alone for governments, supply chain, and us all here to really leave a legacy and a predictable energy mix. And it also offers a significant opportunity in terms of GVA and jobs. When I see SubHub delivering cost savings, and when I see it adding yields and revenues to turbines, and I look at what Tracado and our turbines are delivering in the Oosterschelte dam, and I see and hear the technologies that are being delivered around this room with other companies like ourselves, this sector is clearly ready to go. And it's great to be a part of it. For me, it genuinely is a real pleasure to share our story and passion. And I just again would like to thank Sue, the Marine Energy Council, and actually in particular you for taking the time to invest your time in tidal and marine energy. And I think together it really is up to us to help leave a legacy and make marine tidal energy a part of our renewable energy mix.
Thank you, Keith. And unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about the sound of helicopters that were drowning you out. So I hope everybody can hear okay. But we'll have plenty of time for questions and engagement at the end. But thank you. Very insightful. And Max, another tidal stream company, looking to do similar things with that predictable energy. Can you tell us a bit about sustainable marine energy?
No, certainly, yes. So Max Carcass, representing Sustainable Marine. I've kind of been working in this area of marine renewables, including offshore wind, wave, tidal, probably the last 2 decades. And we've got a massive energy resource sitting here on our doorstep. We've got COP26 going on over there, and yet it's almost completely unharnessed. I mean, it's ridiculous. If it was oil, what would be the kind of measures put in place to try and harness this energy resource that's sitting there? So our company, we are headquartered in Leith in Edinburgh, and we have a workshop there, but we also have offices in Canada and in Germany. We have a major shareholder in the name of Schottel Hydro in Germany, and we're building what will be the world's largest in-stream tidal energy project once it's complete in Canada, which is still a relatively small one, but you can see our technology here on the screen. It's a floating platform like Orbital with turbines that can be lifted up for maintenance, can be very easily installed. You can even see that we've got a little bit of wind on there as well. And that platform is rated at 420 kilowatts, so just under half a megawatt. And the idea is you deploy a number of those platforms to form a project. And so what the reason for the project happening in Canada is support from the feed-in tariff that has been established in Nova Scotia, which is 530 cents per kilowatt hour, which is equivalent to about 31 pence per kilowatt hour. Now that sounds relatively high, and it is, but actually it's much lower than what kicked off wind and solar in the early days. In fact, even in 2010, the cost of solar in the UK was 42 pence a kilowatt hour. So it gives you an indication what can happen if you invest and drive down cost. We also have a UK subsidiary called Swift Anchors, and one of the interesting things is when you're trying to do things that have never been done before, you create new opportunities, you create spin-offs, so there's a lot of value that can be created. And what we're doing is we're providing unique low-cost anchors that can actually be drilled into rocky seabeds, opening up areas that wouldn't otherwise be able to be operated in. We can provide mooring solutions that are suitable for other tidal energy developers, wave energy developers, floating offshore wind developers, which is quite interesting, and also aquaculture. We've already got 37 anchors deployed. We've got customers in Japan and the USA. We've got our own tools. We've got our own installation vessel, subsea drilling rigs, tracked rigs, that kind of thing. And we've got a significant spend here in the UK, in the Scottish UK supply chain. We've spent probably about £5 million in the last 18 months, which is pretty significant given that we haven't got a market here. The ScotWind process going on with floating offshore wind needs local content. Please come and talk to us. We can support that. So we're already delivering export orders. We're keen to develop in the UK, but we need a clear and unambiguous market signal to invest, because it's not just us investing. We have to persuade our investors to invest. Most of our investors in the Canadian project are actually German investors, individual investors. We have about 250 investors in that project. So governments have a strong role to play in creating markets. If you create markets, you create value. And that's me. Thank you.
A great message, and we'll circle back to that, Max, I'm sure. Patrick Moore, the first of our wave technology developers, really interested to hear. We know wave resources, and here in the UK we have a huge wave resource. Interested to hear how your technology is developing.
Thanks a lot, Sue. Great to be here. So I represent Core Power Ocean. So we are one of the leading wave energy developers, and we are unlocking one of the world's largest untapped sources of clean energy out there. So we're talking about a global opportunity of around 500 gigawatts, about 10% of global electricity, or equivalent to all the hydro capacity of the world today, or all the nuclear capacity. So really a huge opportunity. And what makes also ocean energy and wave energy in this case particularly interesting, and most of the customer traction we're getting today, is due to the very complementary and consistent production profile. If we look at the world now, the biggest challenge to transition to 100% renewables is not really the total amount of clean electricity out there. that could have been satisfied just by sun or just by wind on its own. Really, the challenge for the world to transition to 100% renewables is to make sure that we can balance supply to demand at each hour of the year in each region of the system. And this is where ocean energy comes in as a unique tool to just accelerate that transition and deliver a total clean energy system at a lower total cost. And that's what makes people excited about our technology these days. So we have our headquarters in Stockholm, in Sweden. We're about 65 people, also big operations in Portugal these days. As some of you here know, we've been testing our technology in Orkney. This is from EMEC, the picture we're looking at here. This was our half-scale system. We started out in 2011, and we've been following a structured 5-step product verification process since day one. And we have then started small scale, verified the performance, the physics, the hydrodynamics, supporting a very competitive business case. And today we are now doing our first commercial scale unit that we call the C4. This is going to be installed together with EDP, the big Portuguese utility in north of Portugal towards March, April next year. And we're currently dry testing that in our facilities in Stockholm, while we're fabricating the composite hulls that we're doing in Portugal at the moment. And that is part of our demonstration project called Highway 5. And with one cycle of learning in that first C4 machine, we're then adding 3 more devices that we call the C5s, which is the final product commercial grade machine, which we're going to clock at least 8,000 hours of operation on to get type certification from DNV and get wave energy into a bankable product that we can start shipping to customers in volume by 2024, 2025. And today we have a few large project developers actually investing and developing sites around the world using our technology. In the west coast of Ireland, you got Simple Blue Energy, who are developing the Saoirse project, which is using our technology combined with floating wind. And that is to make use of that complementary production profile and combine the sources in order to deliver a product, electricity in a cable, which has less variability and thereby a higher value in the market. In our Portuguese demonstration, we're working with Enel, the big global utility, and also with EDP, as I mentioned there. So we do see a lot of interest from big energy companies now picking up into ocean energy. We feel that is really moving out of the labs into industrial operations. And in Core Power, we are investing significantly in both showing the product, but also being able to deliver this solution at scale. So a lot about the supply chain and scaling up the delivery capacity is what we're working on today. Thanks.
Thanks, Patrick. And it's interesting. I think most of the technologies here were deployed in the UK first. And it's just showing how we're building that capability and building on that innovation. But we'll circle back to the idea of supply chain and how that is going to support going forward, because I think that's going to be critical in terms of commerciality. And last not least, to Martin Carruth, who is the Commercial Director of Marine Power Systems. Martin, if you could tell us a bit about the floating technologies that your company is developing.
Sure. Thanks, Sue. It's really great to be here. And, you know, Glasgow is a city I'm very familiar with. I was born 5 miles up the road, but I'm now living in England and working in Wales, so I feel like I'm a little bit of a hybrid. So yeah, I'd like to obviously explain to you about Marine Power Systems, what we are doing to embrace the energy transition, how we're helping get the global economy to net zero through developing some very exciting combined wave and wind energy solution. Now, our TLP platform that we base our wave and wind technology on is not new. It's been used in the oil and gas sector for over 30 years. It's proven technology. But what's really innovative about what we do is how we change that solution to really maximize the energy capture from both wind and wave power. This enables us to increase capacity factor by up to 20%. And of course, that then allows us to reduce the levelized cost of energy, which, as we all know, is a critical component in terms of you know, getting these projects live and bankable. I would also like to point out that the wave energy converter is a critical part of the marine energy system. Wind alone is not going to be able to fully manage the capacity demands that are put on the energy system. So by combining wave and wind, we can really take advantage of that symbiotic relationship between the two energy sources and really add a huge amount of value to the energy system. So I'd just like to take you through some of the milestones of the company. We were founded in 2008, so we've spent thousands of hours on simulations and modeling of our components and our energy devices. This has also included using the best available facilities in the UK and abroad, using tank testing and the other academic institutes to really help us move along the technical readiness level in an accelerated fashion. Back in 2019, we completed a medium-scale deployment of our technology in the ocean. That went extremely well. It validated the performance of our assets, and it also confirmed the USPs of our devices in terms of installation, deployability, and ultimately making sure we have a stable, secure platform to generate energy. We're now moving on at an accelerated rate. We are advancing our multi-megawatt demonstration project. That's going to be taking place in Spain in 2023. We're going to be testing our devices in all three configurations, so that's wave only, wind only, and the combined solution. And we're really fortunate that we've received funding from the EU via the ERDF source, over £14 million. We're fully financed for the project. We recently went out through crowdsourcing to the retail markets with a plan of raising £2 million, and we raised over £4 million. So there's a huge amount of interest in our technology. There's obviously a huge amount of interest in the sector, and we're really excited about what the future has to hold. Beyond the multi-megawatt demonstration project, we've also got planned to deploy EMEC here in Scotland. I think what's really important is to fully recognise the world-class competency, experience and skills that are available here in the UK. And I think, as my fellow panelist pointed out earlier on, it's really important that we continue to harness that capability. This is a global market. It's very competitive. There are other markets that are looking at taking advantage of wave energy. And of course, we're constantly reviewing opportunities abroad to complement our plans to deploy technology here in the UK. So in summary, I think it's a really exciting time for marine energy. Marine power systems believe we have a very important role to play in the energy transition and helping the global economy achieve its net zero goals.
Thanks, Martin. And I think it's fair to say that with all of these technologies, the question is, why is it not commercial now? And that's the challenge that we're often given as a sector as to why we're not at the scale of offshore wind. What are the key challenges? What are the key opportunities? So I just want to open that to the panel. It's very easy for us to be responding to immediate questions on route to market. But what I'm really interested in is, in your sales pitch, what is the unique selling points of your technology? And then what, on your journey in terms of getting to this close to commercialization, as we feel as a sector we're reaching, have been the key challenges? And let's not all say financing, let's not all say route to market. Where have you found those opportunities and those key barriers? And Andrew, if I can start with you in terms of, a 2-megawatt machine, a fantastic piece of equipment that's been generating onto the grid in Scotland. It's taken a long time to come to fruition. Where do you see this fitting in the global market in terms of your USPs? And what, for your company, have been the key challenges if we remove the financing element?
There's a lot of questions there. In terms of where does it fit is, clearly decarbonising the world's going to come with a massive, massive demand for clean electricity. So, we're not here to displace wind or solar or anything like that. We're here to complement that effort. And for tidal stream, that's not everywhere. It's geographically fairly precise. But in those regions and areas where you get tidal stream, they're just a phenomenally dense form of renewable energy. And if we can cost effectively harness it, we should be. It comes with a whole lot of nice features. It's difficult to quantify economically at this stage in terms of that predictability. You can see how it marries well to things where there's dependability on power, so hydrogen production and things like that. And of course, if you couple it with batteries, you can start to replicate something getting towards base load, or I never like to use the word base load particularly, but you can work a market, energy market with batteries quite well with a tidal. So, I think there is a significant role for a tidal stream to play, really significant in some places of the world, in that transition to net zero. And of course, the other side of it is that it needs to be a just transition. So, we need industries to create jobs. And that's a big selling point that we try and make here in the UK, is that we've got skills and capabilities and facilities that are ready to transition into this, especially from things like oil and gas sector. So I think that's where we fit in, and what we can play as a contribution and a role. What have been the challenges other than outside of financing? Well, it's just a technical challenge on that stage. What I would say, from a tidal perspective, one of the great advantages that we have is that the energy challenge is familiar. It's kinetic energy, turning it into electricity. So pretty much all tidal stream turbines are based on the same architecture as wind turbines. Clearly, because the water is 800 times the density, everything can be smaller. So our 1 megawatt blades are only 8 or 9 meters long, whereas a wind turbine will be, significantly multiples of that longer. So, but it's effectively the same architecture. So it does give us a foot up that there's existing engineering know-how and supply chains that are already kind of very knowledgeable in this space and able again to transition into it. Our gearboxes don't look exactly the same as a wind turbine gearbox, but not necessarily massively different. So I think we've got a big technical assistance and a foot up, which arguably maybe Wave doesn't. In our drivetrain architecture that's generating the power is familiar to investors and to the supply chain in a way. I think what I would just maybe say beyond that, other than finance, some of the challenge in the sector I think is just about recognizing what is ultimately your cost drivers within your technology. I think I've been involved in this space like Max for a very, very long time, and I consistently see engineers refusing to accept what's fairly blatantly obvious in their face. And I understand that. And look, nothing's perfect. I think that's the other thing we have to accept. There is no perfect solution out there. That's not what it's about. It's about being the best, and it's about being lowest cost sort of thing. And ultimately, actually, that's part of the problem, is that we haven't had commercial drivers in the background here accelerating that commercialization process. And that commercialization process is convergence, and it's technology convergence as well. That's a healthy process. It means some technologies and some projects won't be a success, but what's important is that we do get successful projects and technologies through that. Without commercial drivers really putting their teeth into that, that's why I think we're kind of perpetuating an industry. So we could have moved much quicker. Yeah. We could have moved much quicker by learning our lessons quicker sometimes, but actually by having commercial teeth behind the whole process, really driving investment into successful technologies. For us, it has been a major challenge. We've had to innovate around investment as much as we've had to innovate with technology.
And a lot of that comes around openness and getting to a stage of technology where you can share information. And I wonder, Keith, from your perspective, the Tiger project, so 48.6 million euros that have gone into trying to develop megawatts of tidal stream energy across the UK and France. How important is that collaboration in relation to driving out those costs and getting us to a cost of energy that's going to be promotional for tidal stream in particular?
That's a great question and a great project, and I think it's material. The EU's Interreg Tiger project is, as Sue quite rightly pointed out, a 46 million euro project of which we're delighted to be a part. That is all about sharing, and that is all about promoting the industry and the sector. It is pulling together an enormous amount of industry wealth and experience which has been developed over the years, and it is harnessing it, and it is helping to lead governments with great data and information. It is all about cost, and that's ultimately what we're all going to be doing, is driving down that cost. A lot of the work has been done before. You look at sub-hub deriving significant cost benefits, looking at significant yield improvements. That needs to be shared across the industry and across the sector. So it is a phenomenal project, and ORE Catapult, who are leading it, have done a great job with it.
And I know, Patrick, your company has done a lot of work looking at integration, and we heard a lot this morning about offshore infrastructure, the ecosystem offshore, and how we're going to manage electrons through cables in these large offshore systems. What's the importance of Wave and Tidal? I know you speak to Wave, but Tidal as well in integrating in these offshore energy infrastructure and systems.
It's a really unique tool, and I think it goes both for Wave and Tidal, as you say. The production profile that can essentially be used to fill the gaps in the systems when it's not windy and not sunny. And we spent quite a bit of efforts over the years working with some of the leading experts around the world in energy system modeling and providing then the profiles of ocean energy into optimization tools that can find the optimal mix for how you can achieve a zero carbon system at the lowest possible cost. And consistently in each study we've been part of, and this has been evolving the west coast of the US with California and Oregon and so on, many of the European countries, and also various island places around the world. Consistently we see that when you add the profile of ocean energy into the mix, what happens to the system is that you need less total generation capacity, you need less storage, and you need less grid in order to have a system that balances supply to demand at all times. And that is the big savings in cost that you're doing. So we need to get away from looking at what's the LCOE, what's the cost of each megawatt hour. The question is, what's the value of each megawatt hour produced, or what's the difference, of course, between value and cost? That is the real thing that we're all looking for. And it's to get that perspective across and get that understanding among enough of the energy system planners and all the expansion scenarios when the world is now planning to double the consumption of electricity from today until 2040 in most of the scenarios for full decarbonization. That cannot come from wind and solar only. The amount of storage, the amount of grid that would need it to do it would just make it a lot more expensive than it needs to be if you add a mix which is more optimized. And I think more and more people are starting to see that, and that is really the big role of ocean energy. We do have a unique profile there, very valuable.
Yeah, really important. I'm
can I
coming
just
to
add
you,
to that?
Max, just on innovation. You wanted to go to that point on
just
grid.
add
Yeah,
on that
do,
point.
please.
Yeah, and there's some. I mean, a study was done a number of years ago looking at the UK and what the optimum mix would be in terms of that mixture between wind, solar, wave, tidal. And it concluded that if you had the right sort of mix compared to just a wind or solar only scenario, you could save the consumer £2 billion per year. Now, over 20 years, that's 40 billion. That's half the subsidy allocated to Hinkley Point by having the optimum mix. And we could have been saving that if we, started that earlier. Anyway, that was.
And Martin, you want to come in
Yeah,
as well.
I just wanted to jump in there because I think to Keith's earlier point around cost and building on what Patrick's just said, regards to the profiling, I think we need to really understand that wave and wind wave and tidal are doing different things to the energy system compared to wind. And I think what we really need to do is really think a lot harder about what is that additional value that tidal and wave actually bring to the energy system. At the moment, it's almost like we are competing directly against wind. However, they bring different value to the energy system, and it's really important that we understand that, articulate it, and are able to represent that value.
Yeah, Absolutely critical. And I just wanted to touch on this idea of innovation breeding innovation. We've talked about the need for electrification of our energy systems, decarbonisation, but Max, your company's looking at not only tidal stream technology, but floating platforms, and you're talking about anchoring systems. So some of the innovations that are being built out of trying to take kinetic energy out of water are building other areas of innovation.
Absolutely. You know, the point I made earlier, you know, when you're doing something for the first time that's never been done before, putting things in areas that you would traditionally try and avoid anchoring in, you develop, you know, ways of doing it that then have spin-off opportunities to develop other things. I mean, the world is a huge place. There's an awful lot. I was fortunate enough to have dinner with the Indonesian energy minister the other night, and you know, they've got a huge amount of diesel generation on remote islands, and they need a solution. We're about providing a solution to energy to coastal and you know, ocean communities. And you know, there's a huge amount of that noisy diesel generation that we want to displace, and there's a number of ways of doing it. It's not just tidal. It might be a bit of solar. It might be a bit of wind. And if you've got the tools to do that, and you've got the experience in doing that, then it opens up those doors. So, yeah, no, innovation is, you know, there was a talk earlier today, this morning, with Lord Billy, I can't remember his Billy Mora, and you know, he was talking about the level of R&D spend here in the UK, how it's so much lower than some of our leading competitors. If you invest in R&D, you'll get value from it. Not all of it will work, but the key thing is to plant seeds. If you plant seeds, you've got an opportunity of growing flowers. If you never plant the seed, you'll never get a flower. And a good example of that is the Danish wind industry. You know, it was the Danes that had the foresight to support that. Today, the Danish wind industry exports more in wind turbines than the UK's arms industry. And when you think of the political support that we put in the UK behind the defence industry, to support that, and what could have happened if we'd put some pump priming into creating markets, then who knows, you know, what the economic opportunity is as well as the green opportunity. And I suppose that's really the point. This is a global thing. It's not about each individual country. It's about how we make a difference to net zero to get to where we want to get to. And it involves everything in the box, I think. You know, the program here in the UK of offshore wind to an extra 30 gigawatts, fantastic. But actually, if you look at the numbers and you look at what's required to get to net zero, we probably need 4 to 5 times the amount of clean generation we've already got. That 30 gigawatts is only a staging point on it. We need everything in the box to get there. We need to put a real effort to it. It's a bit like, you know, if you're fighting a war, you don't just do it with aeroplanes. You know, you need ships, you need planes, you need tanks. You know, it's the same thing in energy.
I think it's a really interesting point, isn't it? And I'm going to grasp the nettle, but the day we get electric helicopters and we can't hear them will be fantastic. But this idea of innovation, and we've circumnavigated around it, but you know, my opening gambit was, why are we not commercial? Why are we not at the stage of the large offshore scale of wind that we're seeing? And the key issue really is route to market, isn't it? And so how are we going to challenge that with the leaders that are sat opposite on the other side of the Clyde, you know, an industrial waterway where we've seen huge innovation in offshore shipbuilding, maritime nations, a blue planet, and a need to develop sustainable businesses, sustainable supply chains into this economy? Is the route to finance, the route to market key, and what's our ask? So I want to go along the line. I'm going to ask you your key ask of leaders at COP26 today, and then I'm going to open it to the floor for questions. So Andrew, first and foremost, if you had one thing to ask of the gatherings and the meetings we're having across the water for marine energy, what would it be?
So I think it's hand in hand. It's creating a vision that, you know, drives investor confidence, that there's commitment to see this sector play a role, and putting in the mechanics of that. So i.e. a market in the UK, market ring fence within CFD, but clearly, you know, around the world there are other options and routes to doing it. But ultimately those are the things, is create a vision, because investors like to see that, because we are in this for the long run. It will require a lot of investment to grow businesses, deliver projects and things. So this is, you need to give that investor confidence that there is a long-term growth, big prize here, and you need to put in the mechanics of making it start.
So a horizon and a future, and the realities and the mechanism of delivery. Keith, the same for your company?
Very much in similar vein. It's interesting, we sit here as a UK business with operations in Holland, and we see what the UK government is doing and what the Dutch government is doing with its policy around ocean energy. It's clear vision and policy following from that is needed. And we regularly get requests and look at projects around the world. Again, talking about the Indonesians, but also in China, they're looking at seriously large projects at developing and driving the sector. And that's coming from a very clear policy and direction and an action. That's what's needed here. Otherwise, like other sectors and what happens with Denmark, we will lose it. And that's what's needed, clear policy.
Yeah. And Max, your company operational in Canada, taken there by feed-in tariffs. What's your ask for SME?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obvious, isn't it? So, I mean, with the feed-in tariff in Canada, that enables us to raise investment and deploy projects. And, the costs are high initially. If you tried to build a, 1 megawatt nuclear power station, its costs would be astronomical. And the same applied if you tried to do a 1 megawatt offshore wind project. So, there's a cost curve, and then people kind of say, well, the costs are high, how can we be sure that, costs will come down? Well, you can't be sure, but if you look at the evidence that's out there with offshore wind, with solar, with actually any kind of mass-produced product, costs fall, and they fall for a number of reasons. And it's not just as simple as the capital cost needing to halve in price, leading to a half the price of electricity. It's actually a double, triple, quadruple whammy effect you get on all the elements that make up the levelized cost of energy. So the cost of energy is a function of your cost of capital, so the kit. Can you make the kit cheaper? Well, yes, you've made one thing and then you make two of them. Can you get suppliers to shave you a bit off the price? Yes, of course you can. But can you also reduce your operating cost? Well, actually, as soon as you have 2 or 3 objects out there, then your same operations team, your same vessel can go and support 2 or 3 of those projects. Is it the cost of finance? Well, as you gain experience, so your cost of finance reduces. Is it the insurance cost? Well, again, experience drives that down over time. So, or is it availability? Is it, can you improve that over time? Can you improve reliability over time? All of these factors actually come together, and actually you only need perhaps single figure percentages to drive a very fast reduction in cost. But the key to that is deployment. It's experience through deployment. You gain the experience, you optimize, you iterate, you develop, and that's been the evidence from wind, from solar, and that's what we need people to sign up to. That if you talk about subsidy, that's a bad word. Mustn't talk about subsidy. It's a terrible thing. But if you talk about investment, people say, oh yeah, no, well of course we need to invest. You invest to get a return, and so some of it's about the terminology, some of it's about a lack of understanding of how those cost reduction mechanisms come from. But as I said, the early days of wind, you were looking at 80 pence a kilowatt hour in Denmark, you're looking at 42 pence a kilowatt hour here in the UK for solar. So we've done it before, and there are many benefits that result from it if you create those markets, and they're seeing that in Canada at the moment.
So a listening audience, and Patrick, you talked about how we integrate and the need to do that, and levelized cost of energy not being the only cost. What would be your message for COP26?
Well, I would say we need that help to kickstart the sector and drive economies of scale, as has been mentioned by the rest of you here. But of course, I think the evidence is there that with volume, the costs are coming down. If you look at the key cost drivers already, let's look at structural efficiency, how much energy can you deliver per ton or per size of equipment? We are already now with our first full-scale prototypes at the level which is at the same level or beating the best floating wind concept. And the investments in floating wind is absolutely exploding at the moment. And that is, of course, because of the reason that you feel that now the technology risk has been eliminated in floating wind. That's where the money starts flowing in. It's a bankable product. But that was just a few years ago, actually in the same site as we are now demonstrating our technology in Portugal, that Principal Power and EDP made floating wind a commercial product. So we're now operating on that same site and exporting into that same substation. So I think the evidence is coming, it's happening. We're a few years behind that, but we have a very positive view on that this is really happening. And we're seeing a lot of commitments now. I mean, in Brussels, where I'm quite active also as co-president of Ocean Energy Europe, the branch organization, we now have a very strong commitment for 100 megawatts in the water by 2025, and the financial means to make that happen is being put behind it. We still need to see some of the details of it, but there's a strong commitment to make that happen. What we need from countries and regions is to match that so that the first 5, 10, 20, 50 megawatt projects do get built, and that the investors and the project developers behind those can make a reasonable IRR investment on their project to make that happen. But it's a very small total amount of investment needed by countries and regions to make this happen. And the amount of highly qualified job and the amount of export industry, as Denmark mentioned as a good example, it's just an amazing opportunity. This ocean energy is the next big thing in clean energy.
So post-COVID, greening the economy, marine energy is a solution. And finally, the floating wind wave combination. We talked about investment coming in, but key messages to COP26 from your sector.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to just put a little bit of context around this. You know, mankind has been burning hydrocarbons for over 500,000 years, and we're now asking ourselves to stop doing it over 30. Right? It just gives you a sense of scale of the challenge that we're facing. And you know, I think this really requires a paradigm shift in terms of, you know, not just the innovation, but also in terms of the way of thinking, you know, from our politicians, from the regulators. You know, we just have to do something quite different. And I think it's really important that, you know, marine energy is seen as playing a really important role in getting us to net zero. We need to have in place the right regulatory framework. Patrick's talked about, you know, the targets that are absolutely critical. We've got clear targets for other renewable technologies. The same isn't in place for marine energy at a country and regional level in some cases. And that's absolutely critical to building, you know, confidence in the market, investor confidence, bringing down the cost of capital. That's really going to be critical to kickstart this industry. And as I say, help make this really important contribution towards getting us to net zero.
Thanks, Martin, and thanks to the panelists. I think it's been really, really interesting. We've got a couple of minutes, and I appreciate we've had a lot to say, as we always do, but I wanted to open it to the floor for a few questions. I think we've got at the back, thank you, and then we'll come to yourself at the front, and then one in the middle.
Thank you. To make the picture clearer, I think if you could briefly summarize your technology differentiator relative to your panelists, your technology differentiator.
So in 2 words, why is your technology different to others? And I know we've talked about convergence, but a quick sales pitch on, firstly, the O2.
It's de-risked for low cost because it's floating, and every single major component and system is accessible at low cost. And it's scalable.
And for you, Keith?
It's self-deploying, movable, and it's slashed costs and adds yields to turbines, improves revenues.
SME, Max?
It's applicable to lots of different sites because it's quite a modular system, so you can build it up incrementally and build big-scale projects from little elements.
And Patrick on Wave?
We've addressed the key challenges in making wave energy competitive, and that is our devices don't react to waves unless we control them, so we survive storms in a very efficient manner. And then we use advanced control technology that allows getting a lot more energy from the same structure, thereby getting more energy with less cost. We up the structural efficiency of wave energy by about 5 times.
And Martin?
Yeah, I think there's 2 key USPs. The first one is you know, maximising the energy capture across a wide range of weather and met ocean conditions. And the second one, which is really important, is having a scalable modular design that enables you to take full advantage of local content, bringing jobs, creating prosperity for the local economy. So really 2 important USPs there.
Thank you, putting everyone on the spot. And our next question, if you could just state your name and your affiliation as well, that would be helpful.
Can you hear? Yeah, Nigel Robinson from Apollo. It's a really exciting time in this whole sector. We've been following a lot of these projects. I'm interested in your thoughts on supply chain relationships. What makes a good supply chain relationship? Is it long-term partnering? Is it risk share? What is it? Or is it just shaving price? So there's a question.
Okay. Does anybody want to take?
It's a great question, that, and we've been busy exploring that. It's about as much knowing what you don't want as what you want in finding that perfect bride and partner. As we've looked, it is that ability to, I think, first and foremost, help us drive down cost, drive down that LCOE. That's a long-term journey. They'll bring the efficiency, the manufacturing, the skills and expertise, but that's critical. I think it's very important to have the ability to scale, because this is a global sector. And then fit. I think, very importantly, cultural fit and a passion for renewables, mandatory.
Max?
Yeah, no, I think it's sharing the vision. So if you can get the supply chain to invest in where we're trying to get to, then that's really important. So it's being there for the long term. If you look at the wind industry, initially it was wind turbines with tractor gearboxes, but when they saw there was a market there, those manufacturers of those tractor gearboxes said, well, actually, this looks quite interesting. We'll invest in a better gearbox because you're building a wind turbine with bigger blades, and so the cost reductions come down. So getting the supply chain to come with you and invest is really important.
Anyone else like to make any comments on supply chain? Martin?
I can make a quick comment. So yeah, I think it's really important that as an SME that we are deeply embedded within the supply chain and understanding different levels of expertise and how we can benefit from that. There's a huge amount of experience out there, and it's really important that we bring that into our technology. Just as an example, so we've recently announced that we're working with Quotient. So the ex-Palamas group, clearly a huge amount of knowledge and experience around wave energy conversion, and we've just seen that that's brought in a huge amount of value in terms of understanding where there is risk and how do we mitigate it in terms of our technology.
So it's again down to that collaborative use of our skills and experience that we have here in the UK. I think we had one last question. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Elizabeth Halliday, Clean Capitalist Leadership Council. Thank you very much for the panel, and thank you to Mainstream for putting on this terrific conference. I have a specific question for Max about your feed-in tariff, the size of it, and the decline rate and when it ends. And for anybody there, relative cooperation or confrontation with the shipping industry and the wildlife groups. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about challenges earlier, and one of the challenges is regulatory, and getting permits for projects, and it's been the case here in the UK. We've been through that journey. Many regulators go through that process of sort of, this is new, how do we deal with it? And so having leadership at the top of the regulator is really important. We are a climate emergency here. We need to drive forward these things. And so you need to empower the people who are working as the regulators to enable things to happen and learn from them. Quite often the precautionary principle is talked about, and there's often a misunderstanding of what it means, and people sometimes take it to mean that we shouldn't do something because it's a precaution. But actually, if you look at the original UN declaration in Rio, it was about, actually, if something is about creating environmental benefit, the precautionary principle is to actually undertake that activity in order to learn from it. So that's a crucial aspect, and I don't know if that kind of answers the question you were looking at, but that maybe gives you a bit of a flavour.
Okay, I think we have lunch waiting. I'd like to thank all of the panelists. I think we have an opportunity here. I can barely see over the pestle, but we have an opportunity. The next session will be exploring more about this sector and how it's going to meet international and global needs. We've got a unique proposition here with COP26 in terms of marine energy. I personally think that the USPs that my panelists have talked about mean that we have a place in the energy system and that these technologies are absolutely needed. And We know we're being filmed, so I'm going to speak to COP26. We need clear regulation, policy, and route to market if we want to deliver an energy system that is complete and meets the needs both economically and diversification across our environment and across the geopolitical sphere. And this technology is one that fits and ticks all of those boxes. So I'd like you to join me in thanking my panelists. I think that's been fantastic.